A quick editor's note here. As you can see by the date, I am releasing this insanely later than this was originally recorded on, and a couple things happened. Not only has Gwen received much more changes since I recorded this, which I will address later on in the video as well. Um, Also, she's getting reverted, which is actually the main reason I'm releasing this. I didn't really want to release this, but like now that she's getting reverted, I feel like Riot has just gave up, and it's like this is the wrong approach. Reverting the rework is not good. This is admitting defeat here. You're admitting that you couldn't balance her correctly, and that you're just like giving up on this champion, and it's just so wrong because she desperately needs changes. She cannot continue, not in her previous state and not in her current state. She needs an actual good changes, and this is obvious that like Riot do not know how to balance this champion. Also, I wanted to let you know that the audio for this video has glitched for some reason, and multiple points in this video are really bad and not really understandable. I'll try to put some notes in at points where like the audio is really bad, but like I'm really sorry. I'm not gonna re-record this entire video. It's way too long for me to just like fully re-record it. But yeah, there's some definite audio glitches here, and I don't really know how to fix it. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
There is this trend that keeps happening for some reason. When Riot buffs a champion, in order to make it build more HP or more bruiser-like instead of a very squishy type build, they tend to overbuff that champion so he becomes incredibly broken and then nerf it to a point where he either still builds very squishy builds or is just completely useless. I call this the Hecarim effect. A while ago, Hecarim got buffed in order to make it more bruiser-like. They screwed up the ball massively on that one. He became overpowered, got nerfed, built more squishy, so they nerfed him again, and then he still built squishy, so they ended up completely reworking him, and he still built squishy. I genuinely think Riot has no idea how to make a champion actually build HP. Why is it broken like this? What is going on? That she's doing pretty good, but if you look at her build, nothing changed. If anything, she builds squishier currently than she did beforehand. And if you actually take 2 seconds to think on why, I don't think it's that extremely surprising that she's building so much squishier. And if you think I'm like lying, you could look at her builds before and after, and it didn't really change. Except it actually got worse. So why is this happening? And how can you fix it? Also, what's the point with the title? If you are at all thinking about the title, I'll get to that later. But currently, I have to explain why this is a problem, why this is happening. And the answer is very simple. In order to understand this, you need to understand how bruisers like to build. It's often that bruisers need to be balanced around a central healing or a central mechanic of like durability. This is the best way that I can put this through, but like a champion needs to have some sort of way that he likes to play a bruiser style of game. Even though I don't think bruisers are necessarily healers, like they are balanced around healing, Riot has been really comfortable around balancing bruisers in like the healing areas. And the reason is very simple. For a good bruiser, you want a champion that is built to deal damage, but also be able to stay in longer fights. You also want the champion to naturally want to go in front to do damage. This is how you want to balance bruisers. I know there's a lot of people who are going to disagree with that, but that's how you want to do it. And if you're right now thinking about examples like Urgot or Jarvan, they are not bruisers. I would never consider these guys bruisers at all. These are Juggernauts. And the main difference is that Juggernauts, even though they want to do damage, like they aren't really necessarily balanced around wanting to like do damage in order to like survive. Again, it is possible to balance a champion around this mechanic without having a central healing element, but normally when that happens, the champion either tends to go into like a juggernaut area or a fighter area. Alright, pause. Future me here. I explained this part really fucking poorly. Excuse my language. The main difference is that a Juggernaut likes to play the sticky style of gameplay, but normally is balanced around trying to take the sponge hits with like essential threat. Either it be a lot of CC or normally a lot of damage. So it isn't like a tank that wants to engage or like a support that wants to create space and do stuff like that. Instead, he wants to go into the front line and like sponge a lot of hits by being very threatening. Think Mundo, think Olaf, think Sion. These types of champions that like, even though Olaf is arguably more of a bruiser than a Juggernaut, I normally like to use him as an example for a Juggernaut because he does that style of gameplay so expertly. On the other hand, bruisers are normally much more about like not just being sticky, but instead more about not executing champions, but like normally they wanna go in, deal damage, um, create havoc, but not really be that sticky style that wants to sponge hits. Like, don't get me wrong, they take hits, but like, that's not really their main goal here. Their main goal is normally to kill. Normally, they're much more of backline threats. So think like Aatrox wants to get to the backline, wants to create havoc, wants to stun enemies, kill them, heal, run away. Right? Think Renekton wants to jump in, normally get to the back line, stun champions, kill them, heal, run away. These champions are normally balanced around ultimates and stuff like that, like um, Jax, which actually is another good example of a bruiser that doesn't really use healing as a central mechanic, but he does kind of showcase how bruisers want to play the game. They want to jump in. Normally, they're much more backline threats, kill champions, do stuff like that. They can like sponge hits, but like that's not really their goal. Their goal isn't really to sponge hits; it's to kill. That's kind of the main difference here. If you want to group these two categories together, that's normally a good idea because like League does not really have a sort of mechanic that like differentiates between them, like games like Overwatch, which like are much more like have like a literal mechanic that like difference between the different types of damage dealers. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I just thought I should explain it a little bit better. So a bruiser wants to mainly be balanced around his central healing mechanic, and that normally defines how he plays around fights, or how he plays around damage, or how he plays around items, and what style he really wants to play around. If we think about champions that I play, for example, I don't actually, surprisingly, I don't play that much bruisers. I'm normally more into juggernauts. But like, for example, Vladimir, which isn't a bruiser, but whatever. Because his healing is mostly based off like cooldowns and like abilities and stuff like that, he wants to play around range where he isn't actually taking a lot of damage. And normally when he is, it's when he goes to like finish the kills. So he wants to play around range, deal damage, and then when you try to kill him or when you're really low, then he can utilize his superior healing to chase and do stuff like that. Warwick, for example, really wants to duel. Even though he has damage reduction on his E, his main source of like healing is auto attacks and Q, so he really wants to duel champions. Briar, for example, wants to play around low health. Again, these are stuff that is mostly well known, but if you think about Gwen, her only source of healing, which is really surprising, is her passive. And her passive deals percent damage. This is where the real problem happens. If you look at Gwen, this is just a reminder to use the League of Legends official wiki, which yes exists. Anyway, so if we look at Gwen, we can see her basic attack deal on hit, and yes, snip, snip, and needlework also apply this passive. And this passive deals bonus magic damage equals to a percentage of the target's maximum health. This obviously means more max health, more damage he deals. And the main problem is her main source of healing. Anyway, so if we look at Gwen, then we can see her heal is really based on the damage she deals with her passive, which is max health. And the only way to really increase this is to increase the damage. Now, I'm not advocating on healing buffs because those normally go out of hand. But in this scenario, if your main damage is based on the percent of max health you deal for enemy champions, and the only way to increase that is to build AP, then you are really wanting to rush AP. Now, yes, your W is also gives you resistances and stuff like that, but the only way to increase that is also AP. So you have a champion that is mainly balanced around dealing percent damage that heals based on that damage she deals, and the only way to increase the damage she deals is AP. And she also gets resistances, and the only way to increase that is also AP. So you really want to rush high amount of AP. This means you're much more of a late game scaling champion than normal bruisers, which want to be balanced around mid game and power spikes. The main problem is, for example, in lane, if Gwen wants to actually be able to trade, and then she either has to fight a champion with a lot of HP, which heals her, or she just dies. So she wants to play around late game. But as a bruiser, you want to play around mid game. So in the late game, if she buys a lot of AP, she heals and gains resistances. While if she doesn't, if she buys more HP-esque items, she heals less, deals less damage, and has less resistances. Yeah, this is the main reason people rush damage items on Gwen. Like, she has no incentive, no real incentive to build HP, especially because she's just terrible early game except against really high HP champions, which creates another scenario where if she's good in a meta where she's good, she either bullies you out of lane, or if you're like a tank, then she bullies you even harder out of lane. But if she's like not good into the matchup, then she normally just dies way too much early game. If you want to make her more survivable, then she just is able to exist around the early game a lot better and not die as much early game and then becomes a late game monster. There's no real way to balance that. And yeah, that's why she rushes a lot of AP. Like, it's her only way of healing. It's one of her base damage types, and she even gains more resistances. I'm not saying don't give resistances based on AP. I don't think that's actually bad. I think that's okay that she gains resistance based off AP, because this does actually incentivize to build HP. The main problem is the heal. So here's how I want to balance. Gwen, taking these main points into account, I want to make sure that Gwen is actually rewarded for building HP while still remaining more of an anti-tank champion. And that's hard. That's the main hard part. Because percent damage is really hard to balance. And here's where my inability to actually test any changes come really heavily into account. Because I can't test this. I can only go based off stuff that I am aware that I know have like Riot has done before and has worked for other champions. So it's the only way that I can actually even try to guess what will happen. A lot of people think that it's like really easy to make these changes. It's not. Like, there's so many points where even pro players say one thing will happen and then something else will happen, because it's so hard to predict these kind of things. In hindsight, it seems obvious, like, oh, what, you gave Nefiri an invulnerability on a basic ability? Of course she's overpowered. But like, when the rework was like when it announced and people saw like the changes before they were able to test it, most pro players, and you could go back and check, have said that Nefiri changes will leave her underpowered and she'll need to get buffed. I am dead serious, and I watch a lot of pro players. Not that it's like, oh, I watch a lot of pro players, I'm so much better than anyone. No, I'm just like saying that I have done that, and a lot of them said she's going to need a buff. Yes, this incredibly overpowered champion that has completely destroyed the meta currently, pro players thought she needed a buff after this change. And like, I can't say that like, oh, they're stupid. No, it's easy to understand this in hindsight, but it's much harder to predict. Not Riot can predict it, not pro players can predict it, and not even like meta analysts can predict these kind of stuff with great like precision. Like, sure, people that like mostly work in like meta analysis and stuff like that could probably do it, but like not to like 100%. This is just to say, yeah, this I have no way of saying like these are good changes. These are just the changes that I think while trying to keep her identity as an anti-tank champ. So first of all is her passive. I think her passive should not scale off AP. I've made that very obvious. Like, being able to deal like 5 to 8% maximum health damage with like each auto attack and then get heal off that is the main problem here. I don't want that. I think that's bad. I think that's the main reason she builds a lot of AP, because it is her main survivability and it deals percent health max damage, and I think it's very unhealthy for the game. Okay, so my proposed changes is for it to go from 1% plus 0.55 per 100 AP to 1% up to 6% based on level. Her heal goes from 50% to 35% plus 0.9 per 100 bonus health. And yes, I am directly stealing this from Aatrox. This is a really good and healthy way to balance champion like this, because incentivizing bonus damage with HP is bad because it makes champions want to build like barefoot like builds that just have like flat health and stuff like that aren't really damage focused. I still want Gwen to be more damage focused because having a champion deal percent max self damage based off HP is really stupid. It's also again not really that healthy. So making the heal scale of bonus HP is actually a lot more balanced. Because like having her heal 35% while not being able to deal much more damage, in my opinion, is a lot. You can also still make it so the heal gets increased with AP. But I think there you go a little more into that like, overpowered kind of. She can stack a lot of like, AP and HP and just heal a ton for doing absolutely nothing. I don't want that. I don't want her to just like heal a ton for doing nothing. I still want her to be able to deal damage, like especially percent damage, while not being forced to like build a lot of AP, and especially not deal percent health based on AP. I think that's so stupid. I have no idea why it ever existed. So from this is a pretty decent change for a passive. I think this immediately makes her much more likely to try and stack a lot of HP and AP builds. This will not. My main fear is with this is that I think it'll force just this change. I should say. My main fear with just this change is that it will force her to like a lot more again barefoot build where she just likes to stack HP because it doesn't incentivize her to build like much AP to deal damage. I still want her to be a damage champion. So instead of having a massive focus of AP into her passive that deals percent health damage, I want to switch that power into more of her abilities. And I have a lot of ideas for changes for her abilities to make her a lot less cancer to play against. Because even though I love playing Gwen, I can also admit that she's insanely cancerous to play against. And I would like to do that, but like without the ability to test any of these changes, I'm just throwing ideas at the wall. They stick. So I'll try to keep it a lot more bare bones. But I will give some time at the end for like some might die. Her Q, the main idea that I want to do here, currently it just applies 50% of the damage is true damage in the center, and then applies 1,000. I don't think this applies true damage, right? I think the base damage gets true damage, but the percent damage isn't true damage. So the percent damage still is only percent damage, is magic damage. I think that's how that works, if I'm understanding this correctly, and I've played Gwen a bit, so I think that's how that works. Okay, currently this doesn't. I don't think this increases the power of her passive at all. So what I want to do right now is instead of dealing massive bonus amount of true damage, no, this converts the damage to true damage and then applies 1,000 cuts. So I want to make it so it applies a stronger version of 1,000 cuts that has the damage of 1,000 cuts like buffed based on AP. So let's say it deals 1% max of the damage as magic damage, and then like gets a bonus of 10% AP to the damage. It deals the percent and then deals a bonus based on AP of that damage. The reason I don't want to just give the base attack bonus damage based on AP, like it's flat damage, is because I think first it overcomplicates the ability, and I want to simplify Gwen down. But also I think this makes her. This again gets into the perspective where she wants to stack a lot of AP. Because having attack steal bonus AP is kind of overpowered, and I don't want to do that. I want the power to go to the Q instead of to the passive. Because Q has more counterplay, and because I think it's just better. And remember, she still heals based on the 1,000 cuts damage. The main problem here is that she only heals if it hits the center, which I think is fine. I think that's fine that she does that. Yeah, I don't think it's the end of the world it does that. But the idea of giving it to the passive to the 1,000 cuts is for it to heal, obviously. So you have like a way to heal based off AP. I said I didn't want to give the ability to directly heal based off AP because I think it just means that she's rewarded a ton for just auto attacking. Well, here I'm rewarding her more for hitting Qs, which is I think better. And if you want to balance this, just take some of the true damage. And the true damage isn't actually a problem. I think most people understand this. The true damage is not that much a problem because it doesn't apply the 1,000 cuts true damage. So I think that's fine. And yeah, that's it. W I think is good where it is right now. I like that it rewards her for building AP by giving her more resistances rather than straight up damage. So I think that's fine. Okay, so Gwen's E. When I want to do this is very simple. The bonus on hit damage is, in my opinion, pointless. I don't like that it does this. I think just remove this. Just remove the on hit damage. And if you want to balance this out, I'd give her more attack speed early game, and make the buff last a little longer. I think the buff currently, how long does it last? It lasts for 4 seconds. How much does she refund? She refunds by 50%. So late game, it's 8 seconds, and she refunds this to 4. That's not bad. That's actually really not bad. I still think I'd buff it to like 5 seconds and remove the bonus. The idea of this is like to make it so she doesn't have to rely on like Nash's tooth to like have a lot of attack. Obviously, this doesn't overlap, even if she does dash. Even she does have to. I don't think this overlaps, right? I don't think the buff can overlap. So I don't think she can gain like bonus attack speed if she like still has the buff and she casts it again. Because late game, this can absolutely happen. Yeah, I think that's fine. I really think this is a good idea. Like, I think she should still build Nash's tooth, but like this might encourage to not build Nash's tooth. Maybe give her like 40% and then scale it to like 80%. Maybe even like 70%, because 80% might be, and that's like the idea. So she gets no on bonus on hit damage based off AP, so she doesn't like burst you out with like a massive ton of damage, but like she gets more attack speed, so she doesn't have to run. Actually, I think that's fine. And her ultimate, okay, I like the way that her ultimate works. I don't think I'm gonna touch this. The only thing I might do is the slow amount, which was recently buffed, but like I really like how this works currently. So that's most of the basic ass changes, just the basic stuff. And this is where I want to circle back into the title. Why should Gwen be balanced around jungle? I've touched upon this a little bit, but the main problem with top Gwen is, as I said, percent damage is not a good way to balance a late game champ, because this means that against tanks, she has enough damage and healing, even with these changes, to just out sustain them in the early game, and then like even maybe bully them, and then just like outscale. Obviously, with these changes, she has no access to easy percent damage. She needs to scale with levels, which means even if she bullies them, she's not gonna massively snowball lane. And access to less healing early games means a lot of tanks in top lane can just like bully her out with damage. But she still has too much access to like good abilities to bully out tanks, but then still lose way too hard to almost all other champions, because having all of her healing based on percent will make her just too damn reliant on good matchup. Because you either end up in a situation where she's good against tanks and terrible against everyone else, or where she's okay and good against everyone else, and then dominates tanks, because there's this massive shift in her ability to lane in the early game. So the easy change here, move her to jungle. As a jungler, not only she's a lot more balanced and not really reliant on counter picks, because counter picks in jungle don't really matter as much, because everything is much more mattered on like team and stuff like that. If you counter pick a jungle, the team impact is still much more massive than the counter. So she's not gonna be like way too reliant on matchup. She will be good into like all champions in the right situation, but she can still be a scaling champion, because as a jungler, she's not that punished by picking like a champion that isn't a tank. Like, she's not gonna suddenly be terrible if her jungle opponent isn't a tank, because she's not reliant on him to like sustain her through the lane, and not on like percent magic damage to like sustain her through the lane. She's a jungler. She can do whatever the fuck she wants, and she can still build much more bruiser risk build, because she's not too reliant on like early game and sustaining the lane and getting bullied down and snowballed. Jungle is much less snowballing in terms of items, objectives, impact, map. The lane's 100%, but like all AP champions are balanced. All AP champions in jungle are much more late game oriented champions. And more than that, Gwen also fills a niche spot in jungle that just doesn't really exist currently. A bruiser-esque AP champion just it doesn't exist in jungle. Udyr is the only one. He's the only one. And he doesn't build AP, he builds tank. So Gwen could fill that niche. I mean, there is Lilia, but like Lilia is way too squishy and she's also not really as fun to play. And yeah, even though she does build HP, like Lilia is much less like the ideal bruiser AP champion. So Gwen fills a niche that basically only really has Lilia and Udyr, and both of them aren't ideal for that niche. Gwen is. She could be much more balanced around mid to late game with HP and AP items without having to be too balanced on not being able to sustain early game and still being able to be bullied early game. As a jungler, she could still be bullied early game while still having a good scaling late game. It's healthier for the champion, it's healthier for the meta, and it allows for much more of the build that Riot wants to push. Gwen should be balanced as a jungler. And yes, maybe I'm saying this because I am insanely biased, but I genuinely believe this is the correct choice. I've for a long time wanted champions like Aatrox, Darius, even Yorick to be balanced as like junglers, Mordekaiser, Urgot, champions that have all at one point, except for Aatrox, been good in jungle, but are just terrible for the meta. Champions like Darius in jungle just have like zero counterplay if they are good. Champions like Mordekaiser have zero counterplay if they are good. I mean, they do, but like, we're talking way too hard to play against for like most people as jungle, and then terrible in pro. That's the problem. Like, champions like this are just not good as junglers. This is bad for their types of balancing, especially these more early game bruisers that want to bully lanes, but like are way too overpowered in like ideal jungle games. If they are good, they are able to clear jungle, then they could just like run into lanes, have like no risk for going to like ganks. If they catch you, they kill you. If they don't, nothing. They lose nothing for this. They don't even need to flash, ghost, or anything like that. They just like build deadmans that are just a nightmare to deal with. Now, a lot of other champions that were like this have been balanced on like Brand is terrible for jungle, and Morgana, again, terrible for jungle meta. But having balanced on jungle because Riot has no idea what to do with these champions. But while Gwen, I think, could actually be good in well balanced around jungle without much of a problem. Like, what are you really risking here? That she's too okay in the early game? Yeah, that is a bit of a problem. She does have a good matchup into a lot of champions early game jungle. I get that, but that's stuff that is very easily balanced around jungle. In top lane, it's much harder to balance this correctly because, again, she's such an anti-tank champion. As a jungler, it's not a problem. You could bounce around being an anti-tank champion while not necessarily being forced to be picked against tank champions because there are other tanks in the game. Like, there are tanks top, bot, there's supports like bot, and sometimes even mid with like champions like Galio. And like Gwen could still be picked into those champions without having to be forced to be picked against like a tank jungle, which they are tank jungle. And like that's really all I have to say. I hope I made my point clear. Yeah, I know almost nobody's gonna watch this video, but like I just wanted to share my thoughts, like, because like I know most people aren't gonna agree with this. I am aware of this. Like, I think most people are just gonna call me a noob and shout in my face and be like, "Oh my god, why are you saying stuff like this? You don't understand how balancing works at all." I'm like, see, that's it. I just wanted to share some of my thoughts. Like, I love Gwen, and I really think she could have been a good jungler. And like, I'm always disappointed that they chose to balance her up because I just think it's so wrong for like this type of champion. Like, a champion that is just so much balanced from being able to like not die early games, but deals percent damage. Okay, and if you want to hear some of my other suggestions, like how to make the W and Q less cancerous to play against, I have some changes, but like, I think they're too speculative. I don't think there's any way for me to really concretely say these are good changes. These will make this ability less cancer, because I really can't know how this like ends up. I could make like a rework video. This isn't really a rework video for Gwen. I could make a rework video. And if this gets like a good traction, then I might. Like, obviously I know not many people are gonna watch this. I mostly hope that like 1 or 2 people watch this video and be like, hey, this is good. This is like, I like this. This is this is good. Like I really do hope for just like that. This does get good traction. I might make a follow up with like a full rework for Gwen, right? Like touch more of like speculative changes and like actual like reworks to her abilities to make her a lot less cancer plagued. These videos more meant to be like how to rebalance her in a good, healthy way for the game. Rather than like more speculative, less cancer changes that might completely ruin. Obviously, I know this isn't real, just like it's for fun, it's just for fun. So yeah, that's really is all I wanted to say.